Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Spider-Verse Retrospectives. So we are continuing our journey through the Spider-Geddon side of tie-in country, as today we're going to be starting our look at a new trade, specifically Spider-Geddon Covert Ops, a, somewhat smaller trade, which contains 6 issues, 3 for one tie-in miniseries, 3 for another, because after all, there were away teams for both sides of the Spider Army, if you remember. Yes, to kind of go back to Spider-Geddon a bit, during that story, in issue 3, as Otto and Miles were both getting their armies prepared, they mentioned that there were other teams of Spideys going off into other universes to do basically just things that they would be that both sides believe would be necessary in order to further along their causes. And so, both miniseries collected in this trade follow those teams of Spideys as they're off just doing their own thing while the main Spider-Geddon event was going on. And so of course, today we're going to be looking at the first issue of that. As to kick things off, we'll be looking at what Otto's team of Spideys was doing as we take a look at the Spider-Force miniseries. And of course, to kick things off, we're going to be looking at Spider-Force number 1. So, let's do a brief recap. So, like I said, as Spider-Geddon was all going down, Otto and Miles began assembling their own sides of the Spider Army in order to try and take down the Inheritors in their own way. Of course, Otto wound up getting Spideys that would most likely agree with him in taking down the Inheritors, but there was still one hurdle that they needed to cross. Namely, they wanted to stop the Inheritors from being able to revive Solus, because after all, he was their father, and with them trying to rebuild the cloning technology that brought them back, Otto knew that if they revived Solus, then it would greatly stack the deck in the Inheritors' favor. As such, Otto wanted to stop the Inheritors from being able to do that, and as such, he wound up tasking Kaine Parker, aka the Second Scarlet Spider, with assembling a team of Spideys to go to Earth 3145 in order to get the Solus Crystal and thus stop Solus from being revived at all. Which is where this tie-in begins, as issue 1 begins at the end of their mission. The beginning of the comic is it takes place at the end of the away team's mission, as they're on Earth 3145, and everything's kind of going to hell in a handbasket. As we see 3 Spideys, specifically Kaine, Jessica Drew, and an unseen spider person that we hadn't seen before named Spider-Kid, just kind of duking it out with some of Verna's pets, which, just to remind you, are meant to be more feral versions of Spider-Man villains, as they're duking it out in a subway on Earth 3145, and while Kaine is doing his best to hold them off, Jessica Drew and Spider-Kid come in to start and try and help him, despite the fact that apparently he told them to both despite the fact that he told the pair of Spideys to just leave them. Of course, they ignored that order and grabbed him anyway, and it turns out they did something further to try and save his life. As it turns out, they blew a beam out in the subway and managed to flood the whole track. And since the entirety of Earth 3145 is irradiated, the monsters the feral monsters end up drowning in a pool of radioactive water, while Spider-Woman and Spider-Kid manage to pull out Kaine. Unfortunately, though, they're still kind of in hot water, because you see, while the trio of Spideys are wearing hazmat suits to try and protect them from the radiation, of Earth 3145, apparently they only could do that for so long, and their time is up, so Jessica says they have to get to the bunker quickly, though Kaine laments that even if they made it to the bunker, they're dead anyway, and he's killed them. Which is where we actually get to the proper start of the story, as we then cut ahead to several hours earlier, or the day before all this crap, as we end up going to the world of Earth. Hold on, I'm just gonna see if I can find it. But yeah, we pop on the world of Earth 218, as we actually start getting some background to the team of Spideys that Kaine has decided to bring along with him. And firstly, it's time we learn more about this Spider-Kid. And basically, he's another alternate version of Peter Parker. Only this version of Peter got his powers and he was like 13. Similar to Spider-Pete from Edge of Spider-Geddon number 3. Only in this case, he doesn't have an Uncle Ben there to act as his mentor, he also shares his spider powers with. No, actually, he's a runaway. And apparently, his relationship with his Uncle Ben is not exactly as positive as it is in other universes. As Peter pretty much has no as when a mention of Uncle Ben comes up later in the story, he doesn't have the best of reactions, but we will get to that in a minute. But however, despite this version of Peter apparently having a rougher life than his main universe counterpart, there is still his moral sense of responsibility, as we see him just kind of going down the street, just kind of riding his bike down the streets of Queens, as he sees a drug deal going on, and of course, kind of being a little shit, he just pulls out his phone and starts taking pictures. Of course, the drug runners are like, oh hell no, I'm not gonna let that happen, before they pull out their guns and tell Peter, or Charlie as he's calling himself, to hand over the phone. Of course, Charlie tells him to pretty much fuck off, so they get ready to try and duke it out, which earns them a web shot in the face. Yeah, basically, Charlie's not hiding his spider powers at all. He basically utilizing the argument that he looks no different from any other kid in Brooklyn. So if anyone tries IDing him, they'll have trouble. As such, Charlie ends up, after Charlie webs the guy's face, he ends up grabbing him by his neck and then lifts him up, which the other drug runners see and realize, okay, this kid's is more trouble than he's worth, before running away. As such, after Charlie pretty much makes everyone crap their pants, he ends up pulling out the money. He ends up taking the money off of the drug runner and then just tosses him at a dumpster, pretty much telling him, "Stay off this block, or I break your face." As such, the drug runner does end up leaving, and so Charlie ends up swinging away as he changes into his Spidey jammies. Let me see if I can find the Spider Kid costume, because it's not a bad costume at all, really. Yeah, this is Spider Kid. And his costume is honestly not that bad. It definitely feels like it's meant to be a more hip version of the Spider-Man costume, which in a way kind of makes it look stupid, but it also kind of makes sense because while it does contain a lot of the same aesthetic choices that most other Spideys in the multiverse have, it also kind of, the darker aspect of it, of having the black to it, of having more of a black mask with the Spider-Man eyes, kind of fits the aesthetic for Spider-Kid, since he is meant to be a much more rougher version of Spidey. Since while he is 13, his life hasn't exactly been easy. But either way, yeah. After he gets the drug runners to piss their pants, he swings away and goes to his hideout, which in this case is an apartment where he stores all the money he steals off of drug runners. And it turns out that's the money he's been using to get by. However, as he wanders in, he hears someone cough. Someone that is not supposed to be there. As such, he doesn't turn to confront this person and does ask them what the hell they're doing here, but this person just kind of tells them that they need to come with them, and so Charlie just sighs before he turns around and starts shooting webs at whoever broke in, and the person that broke in is Ashley Barton, aka the Spider-Woman / Spider-Girl / Spider-Bitch of the Old Man Logan universe, which I have to remind you, the last time we saw Ashley Barton was in Edge of Venom version number 4, when she got eaten by a Venomized T-Rex, and again, you have to remember that was an alternate universe, so the version of Ashley Barton we're seeing here is the same version that we saw in Spider-Verse, and yeah, we see that her more villainous tendencies are still on display, as she immediately begins asking Charlie why is he not just taking control of the drug runners, because after all, that would be way more efficient. She thinks that would be like way more efficient, and he wouldn't have to keep stealing money off of them. Of course, Charlie doesn't want to do that at all, because, well, he's not a criminal. He doesn't give a shit. But at the same time, he does need a living, and he doesn't want to explain himself. However, in the midst of the battle, Ashley decides to kind of make things more interesting, as she manages to get behind Charlie and grabs a safe that he'd been using to store all the money in, and chucks it right out of the apartment, with telling Charlie that if he doesn't get the safe, then it will either fall on the ground below and end up hurting people, but if he tries to grab it, then he'll be pulled out along with it. Charlie grabs at the safe, which I like. It's a nice little way of showcasing that while this kid may be a lot more rough and tough than other Spideys, he's still Spidey, and so yeah, he is pulled out with a safe, but thankfully a well-placed web line is able to stop him from falling to the ground. As such, Ashley comes back and tells Charlie that she needs his help with something, that she wants his help to save the world, so to speak. What I even love too is that as she talks to Charlie, She calls him Grandpa because I gotta remind you, in Ashley is meant to be the grandson of her. Ashley is the granddaughter of her world's version of Peter Parker. So I kind of like that. She just keeps calling him Grandpa throughout the story, and Charlie, and just very much It very much just kind of makes Charlie feel uncomfortable because you have to remember he's 13. He does not care. He's not old enough to even have kids yet. So the fact that a grown ass woman is calling him Grandpa, he's like, the fuck's going on here? But either way, yeah, she tells him, like I said, she tells him that she needs his help to save the world. But Charlie ain't exactly biting on this because, like I said, due to his tougher upbringing, he's not exactly willing to go out on big life-threatening missions for the sake of everybody else. Like, yeah, he may be a good kid, but that doesn't mean he likes people. And as a result, and even when Ashley tries giving him the great power, great responsibility mantra, he just tells her to shut up and says he doesn't want to hear it. However, Ashley is not taking no for an answer, as she tells him that he needs to listen before handing him a watch and telling him that he needs to use it. Which Charlie, while still confused, decides to kind of listen to her as he takes the watch and activates it. From there, we then cut to Earth 616 as we see Kaine Parker going to recruit another member of another Spidey for his away mission, and that Spidey is Jessica Drew, aka Spider-Woman, which is a bad idea all around because if you remember when I was talking about Spider-Geddon, one of the Spideys that the Web Warriors were considering recruiting for the new army was Spider-Woman, but they immediately shot that down because she's a mother now and they don't want to put her at risk. So it's nice to see that Otto's side decided to just throw that to the wind because we see Kaine walking into her apartment as her baby has apparently trashed the place, which I admit is both hilarious and adorable because when Kaine arrives, the door just opens on its own, and when he walks inside, there's her son just clinging to it. And even in another room, even later on we see that apparently Jessica's husband Ross has actually just been tied up in blanket that apparently Jessica's son wrapped him in. So yeah, this kid's a little hellion, but maybe he takes after his mother. I don't know. But either way, as Kaine enters the apartment, Jessica ends up coming back after her superhero wing. And quite frankly, she knows that Kaine's here to recruit her for something, and she wants no part of it. After all, she has a family now. She has responsibilities, so basically, she doesn't want to take the risk. Of course, Kaine tries to win her over by letting her know the inheritors are back, we need your help. But again, Jessica reiterates she's not interested. She has her own life going on, and she doesn't want to risk potentially losing that life by taking part in this. And after all, and the thing is, if they're looking for Spideys across the multiverse, there's probably an alternate universe version of Jessica Drew that they could call. So she recommends calling one of them. However, Kaine shoots this down because he says that they don't want raw Spider people. They need Spideys with experience, and Jessica, well, she has experience. They need her help, but again, she's not really going for it. As such, Kaine reluctantly does accept her words. But he also tells her that if they don't succeed in their mission, then unfortunately the inheritors will come for her son, since he is still technically a spider totem, and he especially notes that because he did tell Jessica that the mission that he wanted her for was to go to Earth 3145 to get the Soulless Crystal, and that the inheritor they'd be dealing with then is Verna. And just to remind you, Verna really likes younger spider totems. The younger, the better. So imagine how she views a young baby spider totem like Jessica's son. As such, Kaine does leave so Jessica's alone with her thoughts and her tied up husband and her baby. But then from there we end up cutting back to Ashley and Charlie as they warp to Earth 616 themselves, specifically in what's left of Otto Octavius' lab after it blew up. And thankfully, there's still enough left of the lab that they can go in and start searching, but unfortunately for them, some of the latent security for the lab activates, including a spare Octobot that was modeled after the superior octopus. As such, Ashley just essentially throws Spider Kid at the Octobot while she goes off to try and access any of Otto's computers that are still turned on, and well, what I love is that Spider Kid has absolutely no idea what the hell he's doing. Like, he just, like, when the Autobot ends up charging at him, he has no idea how to counter him because he's never dealt with Doc Ock on his world. And likewise, likewise, going on while Ashley keeps calling him Grandpa, he's like, hey, come on, is this like elder abuse or something? It's, I don't know why, it's funny. However, thankfully, Spider Kid does manage to overwhelm the Octobot as he manages to get a hold of two of its tentacles, and from them he manages to rip the Octobot apart. Unfortunately, though, a lot of Otto's computers are still trashed from when the lab blew up, and Kaine ends up coming back as he does apologize for having not turned that off. He thought he did, but well, clearly that he didn't because the Octobot was still there. Either way, he leads Ashley and Spider Kid to a back room in the lab, as that's where we see the hazmat suits that Kaine and the Spider team are utilizing at the beginning of the comic, telling that these are more precautions that Otto saved up in case of, well, an emergency like this, because which the radiation suits are somewhat limited, basically. As in Kaine's own words, they can only stand at least 12 or 15 minutes of intense radiation before they become useless, but they think that that's all they'll need, because like I said, their main mission is to go to Earth 3145, get the Soulless Crystal before Verna, and destroy it. However, before this trio of Spideys can go off, they get another recruit for their team, Jessica, who did indeed think it over and realized, yeah, she did need to do this for her son. That her son needed to see her for the hero that she was, and she did need to stop Verna. So, yep, the team is complete. We got our quartet of Spider people, and so the four of them end up donning these radiation suits, and they open a portal straight to Earth 3145. Unfortunately, the instant they get there, their transdimensional watches are shorted out. And the one who shorted them out was Kaine. Yeah, it turns out Kaine kind of tricked everybody. It turns out this is kind of sorta a suicide mission. Basically, the reason why he shorted out their watches is because Verna only managed to make it to Earth 3145 via a stolen Spider watch. And so Kaine believes that if they can cut off Verna's escape route, then they might be able to stop. Then that will at very least put a stop to her potentially getting away with the crystal. Unfortunately, though, some of the Spideys aren't exactly okay with this kind of deception. Especially Jessica, because again, Kaine has trapped her on a radioactive planet that the Spideys are well aware will kill them if they're there long enough, and she's left her husband and son back on her Earth, so she may potentially never see them again. Very much a dick move, Kaine. Very much a dick move. However, as Jessica is rightfully pissed at the second Scarlet Spider for what he did, Charlie ends up looking around and does start asking questions about Earth 3145, because, yeah, when you enter an alternate reality where everything is just completely nuked, you can't help but ask questions. As such, Ashley ends up filling Charlie in on what happened to Earth 3145, how this world's Doc Ock wound up nuking the world, and how this world's Spider-Man, who was, of course, Uncle Ben, wasn't really there to stop it, and this is again where we see that this is actually the first time that we see that Charlie and his Uncle Ben did not have a positive relationship, because the instant Uncle Ben's name is mentioned, his hands start shaking. And when he starts mentioning that, of course, Uncle Ben's an ass on this world too. Which does kind of make Jessica pause from going after Kaine, as she ends up asking what the heck happened to him, and all Charlie can really say is that his parents died in a plane crash, and life's been a load of fun ever since. Which, yeah, that's just kind of sad, so to speak. However, the Spideys still need to focus on their mission, because ultimately, as Kaine says, they have to either stop Verna or die. So basically their main priority is still finding the Soulless Crystal, and thankfully they do have a means of tracking its specific energy signature. However, before the team of Spideys can go on the hunt, their spider senses trigger and they end up scattering just as a laser blast where they were standing. And the comic ends as a fifth Spidey enters the fray. One who was also created specifically for this miniseries, and one that calls Earth 3145 his home, as we see the second Spider person of this universe, Astro Spider, aka John Jameson Jr., an astronaut variant of Spider-Man, who, well, I'm just going to show you the picture. Yeah, he's basically just an astronaut with a spider emblazoned on his chest. That's kind of awesome. So, yeah, that's where the comic ends. So, my thoughts on Spider-Force. Again, I think it's a pretty good start. It definitely leaves you asking questions about what the hell is going on as the story is told in media res, as the beginning of the story takes place at the end of the miniseries before jumping ahead before it goes back and showcases this team of Spideys as they're being formed. But otherwise, it does make it. But that's a nice way of cluing you in that things are definitely gonna go wrong for this series. So of course, it definitely kind of follows the typical trope of how did we get here, which I know some people find to be an annoying trope, but it can be a good way of grabbing your attention, so to speak. So yeah, definitely. So yeah, I guess I'll call it a pro and con, as a pro of it is definitely that it can grab your attention and make you wonder how did the spiders get there, but a con is that you're also going in knowing, yeah, this team of Spideys is probably not going to make it out of this in one piece. So, yeah, again, kind of a double-edged sword in that regard. With that said, though, again, it also makes for a good tone setter. Because after all, you have to remember that this team of Spideys is meant to be more hard and grizzled than your average spider people. Because after all, this team of Spideys is representing Otto's side of the Spider Army. The versions of the Webhead who were for killing the Inheritors. So basically, when you're representing that side of things, of course you gotta get Spider people to match it. And the selection we have here is honestly a pretty good one. After all, going off them one by one, Kaine Parker is the more harder, grizzled clone of Peter. He's had a very rough life, and like I said when I talked about him during Spider-Verse, he started out as a villain before eventually transitioning to hero, and even that wasn't an easy transition, as while he wants to still fight the good fight and help others, he's still very much got a lot of anger boiling up, and he's not and he doesn't like to quip. He's very much serious to get down to business, and if he believes it's appropriate, he will punch your face in if he thinks it'll get the job done. And it's clear that he's been dealing with some shit. Because after all, if you remember, at the end of Spider-Verse, he done got killed and only survived because of his connection to the other. Though, like he said in Spider-Geddon, he's not the other anymore. But it's clear that he's definitely dealt with his fair share of crap since that resurrection, because you do see him without his mask at one point in the comic, and he doesn't look good. Now, I'm sure this is explained in the series he appeared in between Spider-Verse and Spider-Geddon, because, well, he did still deal with some shit then, as he wound up dealing with Patient Zero of an unknown virus during the events of the clone conspiracy. He did end up clashing with Ben while Ben was still struggling with his insanity. So, odds are whatever happened to him probably happened in one of those comics, or maybe both of them. But at the very least, if you haven't read those stories, seeing his face afterwards with with burnt patches of his skin and claw marks over one of his eyes, it definitely showcases, yeah, he's still got a mean streak. On top of that, like I said, as we once again go back to the team, as I said, Jessica Drew is definitely one of the more serious level-headed Spider person in the main Marvel universe, as she definitely had a much harder upbringing than Peter, and she takes the hero thing a lot more seriously. And I'm not saying that to make Peter sound irresponsible, because he's not irresponsible. Peter does understand the ramifications of being a hero and does his best to help others the best way he can every day. It's just that Jessica Drew grew up a soldier and was trained from when she was young to use her spider powers the way she did. So of course it makes sense why she wouldn't be as quippy as Spider-Man. But so again, nice fit. Then you get to Ashley Barton, who, as we have established, is a bitch. She does not care for anyone but herself, and part of the only reason that she even helps the Spider Army like she does is because the threat also pertains to her. She's a Spider Totem too, so she knows if the Inheritors win, they'll come after her. And as the various Spider people have told her, these things can kill her. She knows that to be true. She's seen them in action. They have brushed off some of their most deadly attacks. Hell, she stabbed Karn with a sign once, and he just pulled it out and then brushed it off like nothing happened. So again, she's hard as nails and would definitely be a good, perfect addition to Autoside. But then, of course, that brings us to Spider-Kid. And I'm not gonna lie, seeing this kid introduced to the story, it's interesting. I like how they set him up because the whole general idea with him is that, yes, he's meant to be an alternate version of Peter Parker, but he's a Peter Parker who has not had a good life. And they kind of showcase that well in the story. Because after all, he does still show traits that you recognize with Peter Parker. You learn that he's kind of a smart aleck. He quips at battle. He openly mocks his enemies and just kind of laughs at their attempts to try and fight against him. And then likewise, despite his more angry demeanor, he wants to help people. He despite the fact, yes, he steals money from drug runners in order to keep himself afloat, since, again, he's a runaway, but at the same time, he is stopping the drug runners and actively telling them, stay away, just go, and if you don't heed my warnings, I will pound your face in. Again, I like that. It's basically a nice way of showcasing that he is still Peter Parker / Spider-Man, despite the different circumstances. With that being said, though, those differing circumstances did still have an effect on him, because after all, he is still a runaway. And while he may have got... And it's clear that whatever his relationship is with Aunt May and Uncle Ben, it isn't a positive one. Because like with the main universe Peter, he lost his parents in a plane crash, but going back to when he heard about Uncle Ben when he asked about Earth 3145, well, again, it's a nice little way of showcasing that this version of Uncle Ben may not have been as positive a force as other versions have. Like because his version of Uncle Ben, well, kind of going off of what we get in the first issue, it's implied that he was probably abusive. Because after all, once his name comes up, Charlie's hands begin shaking. You can tell there's a visceral fear from just hearing his uncle's name being mentioned. And then likewise, when he hears that part of the reason why Earth 3145 is the way it is, because this world's Uncle Ben just sat back and did nothing, he basically just goes, figures, I guess he's an ass on this world too. Again, that's a nice little way of hinting at the darker aspects of his character, and helps showcase partially why he probably has the chip on his shoulder. Because after all, while he is still Peter Parker, and definitely still has enough of that youthful exuberance that you would expect from a 13-year-old Spider-Man, by that same token, he's had a rough life. His parents died, he wound up going to live with an abusive uncle, and now he's living on the streets, just doing what he can to survive, and using these weird spider powers for something, that not only help him live, but to at least try and make life a lot more bearable for other people. Which, I like. I dig that. I dig that. It's a very interesting take on the character, and like I said, the comic does a good job at hinting at some of the more darker aspects of his past, while also showcasing enough to let you know that this is still indeed a variant of Peter Parker. Like I said, he still quips in battle, he's still kind of a show-off, he still has that trademark Spider-Man charisma where he just kind of laughs in the face of his enemies because he wants to get on their nerves. So, I dig that, but there are still enough hints about what his life was like before the comic that make you kind of make you intrigued by him and let you know, yeah, this is still a Spider-Man, but it's a Spider-Man with some heavier baggage than you may know. So again, it's good, and it's a great tone setter for the rest, and it helps set the tone. Combine that with the fact that the Spideys are told implicitly we are fighting for our survival here, and we are going into a radioactive hellscape that we may not be able to walk out from if we stay too long. It definitely kind of showcases that this is not just buddy fun times. And while Spider Kid is definitely the most inexperienced out of all of them, is the one that is asking questions. Which actually, I'm kind of wondering why they even recruited him at all. Because like I said, Kaine is going after experienced Spider people. So why get a 13-year-old to join your team? So okay, I guess I'll consider that a flaw. But like I said, it still manages to set a tone, and when when they finally do get to Earth 3145 and Kaine shorts out their watches, it definitely makes you feel like this is an all or nothing kind of setup. And it definitely makes you want to kind of punch Kaine in the face, because that was a dick move. No matter how you slice it, he lied to this team of Spideys and told them, "Oh, we're just gonna go to Earth 3145 and stop her, and we'll be able to make it back." But then the instant he gets there, he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I shorted out your watches, so we're kind of stuck here unless we can kill Verna." Like, what the? Like, dude, up yours. I know you're trying to win a war here, but that's just awful. You tricked your soldiers into joining you under false pretenses. Up yours, dude. So yeah, it's a tone setter, but also kind of dick move. But but one thing that also grabs your interest: the introduction of Astro Spider. Because after all, when we looked at Earth 3145 previously, we were told that this world's only spider person was Spider-Ben. He was the one that got bitten by the spider. He was the one that became Spider-Man, and it was because of his absence that this world wound up going to hell. But now we're learning that another spider person has appeared in this world. One that operates as an astronaut. This time, and it definitely grabs your interest. It makes you want to know what his deal is. What is going on? Is he friend or foe? After all, yes, he may wear the spider crest on his chest, but he opened fire on the team of Spideys right away. So there may be some hurdles that the team of Spideys need to cross before they can get him on their side. So it definitely is intriguing and does make you want to know where things are going to go. So I guess on the whole, I think issue 3 of issue 1 of Spider Force is a pretty good start. It definitely is a tone setter as we're showcasing the team of Spideys that are a lot more are definitely more serious and grounded than you would expect from are definitely more serious and grounded than other versions of the webhead. They immediately set the tone by showcasing that they went on the mission, that things are going to go to hell, which again I'm going to call a double-edged sword, because it also kind of takes away from suspense when you know that things are going to go bad, and then but at the same time also can grab your interest. But then at the same time, by showcasing that this is an all or nothing mission, that they have to stop Verna or they're going to die here, it definitely kind of adds a bit more tension to the whole thing, especially when Kaine tells them that the suits they're wearing can only allow them to survive for 15 minutes at a time. So if they want to survive, they got to find ways around those 15 minutes. Again, interesting stuff. I dig it. So on the whole, a pretty good start. Definite tone setter. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I'll hopefully see you next Thursday to look at issue 2. So until then, hope you have a good day, and take care.